Hello there, I'm your host Karim Zachary. Great to have you with us. Let's have a look at the headlines. The Algerian Prime Minister received the personal representative of the British Prime Minister in charge of the economic partnership with Algeria, Lord Richard Rizvi, as well as the Azerbaijani Energy Minister Pervez Shabazov. Also coming up, 5 Palestinians were killed by Zionist army bullets in the occupied West Bank. You will also be watching in our news the Turkish ground military operation in north of Syria could begin at any time. And the United States has reduced the number of partnered patrols in northern Syria with Syrian Democratic Forces. Also in our news, Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammad Shia Sudani confirmed that no political or military information or formations should be allowed to conduct operations against Iran from his country's territory. Hello again and welcome to the program. First in our news, the Algerian Prime Minister received the personal representative of the British Prime Minister in charge of the economic partnership with Algeria, Lord Richard Rizvi, in which the two sides held bilateral talks. The reception ceremony took place at the Algerian government palace. In the same respect, the Algerian Prime Minister, Mr. Ayman bin Abdurrahman, received the Azerbaijani Energy Minister, Pervez Shabazov, who is visiting Algeria. The reception ceremony took place at the Algerian government palace as well. And in a different matter, the European Union has funded 36 community-based local development projects at the level of 10 pilot municipalities in Algeria under the CAPDEL program. The Algerian Interior Minister Ibrahim Murad described the results of the CAPDEL program as successful, as it enabled many active Algerian associations in local developments to expand their activity beyond the country's borders.
I do not miss to praise the outstanding national and international experience mobilized in this program, which clearly reflects the course of the tripartite partnership between our ministerial department, the United Nations Development Program, and the European Union.
And in Algeria, still, the head of the European Union mission to Algeria, Mr. Thomas Eckert, described Algeria as a stable energy partner that fulfills its commitments with the expansion of its shares in the European gas market outside the traditional market. Marwa Belaiwar has the details.
The European Union described Algeria as an essential resource that fulfilled its commitments, which expanded its export share to include new countries in Central and Eastern Europe and was able to provide the necessary and timely gas supplies to many European countries.
Algeria remains a stable supplier, which is really a key supplier for several European countries, especially the Mediterranean ones, and it will continue in the next years.
The energy partnership relationship between Algeria and the European continent has been strengthened by dialogue meetings at the highest level in which Algeria had a fundamental and essential role as it guarantees energy security for many European countries.
Our cooperation in the field of energy is very essential. There are several European countries that depend mainly on Algerian gas, such as Italy, Spain, and even France, and recently Slovenia. There have been many bilateral meetings between the European Union and Algeria to enhance the field of cooperation, the latest of which was a high-level meeting supervised by the European Commissioner for Energy Affairs, Kadri Simpson, and we will continue these meetings in the future.
Europe recognizes Algeria's effort in fulfilling its contractual obligations for natural gas as the most important and reliable partner within a future historical relationship on other stages of development and expansion in light of the signing of new deals by European countries to buy Algerian gas.
Moving on to a different matter now, Algeria and Azerbaijan, signed on Tuesday a memorandum of understanding in the energy sector. In the context of expanding their cooperation towards renewable energies, the memorandum, which was signed on the Algerian side by Energy and Mines Minister Mr. Mohamed Arqab, with his Azerbaijani counterpart Parvez Shapazov, includes cooperation in the field of hydrocarbons, electricity, renewable energies, training, and the exchange of experiences.
Cooperation agreements between Sonatrach and Sukar of Azerbaijan have been signed in several areas for the development of the energy sector and in several projects in Algeria and Azerbaijan.
The Azerbaijani Energy Minister Parvez Shapazov hailed the permanent and expanded dialogue between the two countries within the framework of the OPEC Plus alliance to ensure market stability in the medium term, as well as the consultations between the two countries within the framework of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum.
We have between Azerbaijan and Algeria the long-term cooperation. We have also the rich history of relations between two countries, and energy sector has been always important part of this cooperation. Back in 60s of last century, the Azerbaijani scientists, engineers, the oil industry workers.
Algeria has reinforced its legislative and organizational arsenal to broaden the use, of barter across the borders with neighboring Mali and Niger as part of regional and international efforts aimed at achieving African integration. The sector has made a lot of efforts to reactivate the barter activities by reviewing the organizational text that frames barter trade. Algeria's efforts are mainly aimed at enriching and broadening the list of goods subject to barter and facilitating the entrance and exit of those goods from and to Algeria.
The sector has made a lot of efforts to reactivate barter activities across the borders by reviewing the organizational text that frames barter trade.
To neighboring Libya now, the Libyan Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dbeibah said that he is ready to communicate with everyone, without exception, to end all differences and to respond to any initiative to boost confidence among the active rather than passive parties. Speaking at the Together We Achieve Elections conference on Tuesday under the supervision of the Election Supporters Organization at the headquarters of the High National Elections Commission in Tripoli, Dbeibah said national dialogue is the alternative to fishy deals plotted behind the scenes, voicing hope for expanding the participation of actors in the community.
I am ready to communicate with everyone without any exception and overcome all the differences. National dialogue is the alternative to fishy deals that are being plotted here and there behind the scene.
In Morocco, thousands of people have demonstrated massively in several cities of the country against the rising prices, the corruption of the ruling class, the arbitrary arrests, and the persistence of the Makhzen regime in its policy of normalization with the Zionist entity, despite popular rejection, that is. In this regard, the Moroccan Front in support of Palestine and against normalization staged yesterday, Tuesday, a protest in Casablanca on the occasion of the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. And speaking of Palestine, the occupied West Bank witnessed a new escalation on Tuesday, which resulted in the killing of 5 Palestinians by Zionist army bullets, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Let's follow this report by Mariam Zian.
In a new escalation, 5 Palestinians were killed and more than 20 were injured by Zionist forces in the occupied West Bank in less than 24 hours. The Palestinian Health Ministry confirmed that 2 brothers in their early 20s were shot dead in Kafrain, northwest of Ramallah.
Today we woke up with terrible news. We learned the loss of 2 brothers, who were also brothers of all university students. They were members of our national movement. For us, it was an unusual event and a shock to lose 2 people who were still studying with us yesterday. This is evidence of the arrogance of the occupation and that it does not differentiate between students, women, or the elderly. There is no respect for humanity. It is a barbaric and violent occupation.
Another Palestinian who sustained a critical injury in the chest succumbed to his injury in Ramallah city. And in the town of Beit Omar, north of Hebron, a father of 6 was gunned down and later died of bullet wounds to the head during a pre-dawn raid. The occupation army justified the shooting of Palestinians in Kafrain and Beit Omar in response to what it described as violent riots, acknowledging hitting by live bullets. In the village of Al-Mughayr, northeast of Ramallah, another young man died after being shot in the chest by Zionist occupation soldiers who claim he carried a break-in. The Palestinian presidency considered that, I quote, "daily murders are the declaration of war on our people and the destruction of everything." Presidential spokesman Nabila Bourudayna held the Zionist government fully responsible for these crimes, calling for their accountability.
The current and incoming right-wing government has declared daily war against the Palestinian people.
Violence in the West Bank, occupied by the Zionists since June 1967, has escalated in recent months with more than 2,000 raids and security operations. The number of Palestinian martyrs in the West Bank and Gaza Strip during this year reached 206, the largest number in 7 years, and as the Zionists continue to form a new government.
Still with Palestine, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for immediate measures to reduce tensions in the occupied West Bank, the scene of escalating Zionist violence on the occasion of the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, which coincides with November 29th of each year. The UN chief reaffirmed his support for the Palestinian people in their will to build a future of peace, justice, security, and dignity. Still in the Middle East, but this time Turkey. Turkish presidential spokesman Ibrahim Kalin said that the ground military operation in the north of Syria could begin at any time, depending on the assessment of the relevant references in Turkey, noting that Ankara demands that the Kurdish YPG be in areas 30 kilometers from the Turkish border and stop trying to infiltrate Turkey. He asserted that his country's forces had not yet targeted any United States or Russian soldiers, which was not one of its objectives, while the head of the US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces said on Tuesday he still feared a Turkish ground invasion despite US assurances and has demanded a stronger message from Washington after seeing unprecedented Turkish deployments along the border. And speaking of Washington, the United States has reduced the number of partners or partnered patrols in northern Syria with Syrian Democratic Forces known as SDF. The Pentagon said on Tuesday, November 29th, after Turkish strikes in the region and ahead of a feared ground invasion by Ankara, Pentagon spokesman Brigadier General Patrick Ryder said that while operations against Islamic State had not stopped, the patrols had to be reduced because the SDF had reduced the number of their own patrols.
Right now, the de-ISIS mission does continue. We have reduced the number of partnered patrols. And as I mentioned in my statement last week, we do remain deeply concerned about the escalating actions in northern Syria, Iraq, and Turkey. And so we certainly urge restraint amidst the tensions in this region. And as you highlight, the continued conflict, especially a ground invasion, would severely jeopardize the hard-fought gains that the world has achieved against ISIS and would destabilize the region. Similarly, as I mentioned in my statement, we do recognize Turkey's legitimate security concerns regarding terrorist acts that have occurred within its own borders.
Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia Sudani confirmed that no political or military formations should be allowed to conduct operations against Iran from his country's territory. During a joint press conference with Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, he explained that his country would continue to cooperate with Iran in the area of counter-terrorism and that it had been agreed to activate the work of the Iraqi-Iranian Joint Economic Commission as soon as possible.
Our perspective and that of the Iraqi government, security, peace, cooperation and stability in the region are very important. Therefore, the fight against terrorist groups, organized crime, drugs and other forms of insecurity that threaten the region rests on the joint will of both countries.
To a different story now, President Vladimir Putin highlighted the progressive development of relations between Moscow and Beijing, despite the instability of the situation worldwide. The Russian president explained that Moscow and Beijing will ensure a high level of ties in the oil, gas, coal and energy sectors. President Xi Jinping said China is willing to forge a closer partnership with Russia on energy issues to ensure global energy security. And to the crisis of migrants now. Small children were among 61 people rescued on Tuesday in one of the largest emergency operations staged by French authorities in recent months, as calm seas prompted a rush of migrants in small boats towards the coast of Britain. Emergency officials in the port of Boulogne, where the migrants were brought ashore, said about 30 people had to be plucked out of the cold waters of the English Channel as they rushed to climb aboard a French rescue vessel from their rubber dinghy, which had been taken on water. And in a lighter note, China's newly launched Shenzhou 15 mission marks another milestone moment in the country's 30-year manned space program, with the latest mission set to complete the construction of China's historic Tiangong space station. The Shenzhou 15 mission, carrying 3 astronauts, blasted off successfully from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in northwest China's Gobi Desert on Tuesday evening, heralding the start of a 6-month-long space mission. The global community is excited about the future development potential of China's space exploration program, according to the executive director of the International Astronautical Federation, IAF, who hailed the country's fast-paced progress in building its own space station from scratch.
I need to recall even the launch of Shenzhou 5 in October 2003, where actually for the first time China was launching its first astronaut, Mr. Yang Yiwei, to space, which I think the whole world was kind of really excited about. China became the 3rd country to be able to send humans to space after the Soviet Union and the United States. China is one of the leading countries in low Earth orbit, with having their own infrastructure, having all the systems in place to supply this platform.
And for more international news, let's follow this news in brief by Mohammed Khatil.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Tuesday that NATO will reinforce its presence from the Black to the Baltic Seas. The US Secretary of State said during a joint press conference with Romanian Foreign Minister Bogdan Oriscu that NATO is not going to be deterred going forward, but rather reinforces its presence from the Black to the Baltic Seas. Blinken also said that NATO is committed to building a modern and interoperable military and that will have benefits across the entire naval space, including when it comes to Black Sea.
When it comes to the Black Sea region, this is an area of vital strategic importance to us and to NATO. We have three allies that are literal states, as are close partners, Ukraine and Georgia. Russia has turned parts of the Black Sea into a war zone. We've seen missiles from warships coming into Ukrainian cities and towns. Russian forces, of course, have blocked Ukrainian ports, causing what has been the worst food security crisis in years.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said on Tuesday, upon his arrival for a meeting of the alliance's foreign ministers, that NATO allies are sending supplies and working to rebuild Ukraine's infrastructure. NATO foreign ministers will focus on increasing military assistance for Ukraine, such as air defense systems and ammunition, even as diplomats acknowledge supply and capacity issues, but also discuss non-lethal aid.
We have delivered generators, we have delivered spare parts, and the allies are in different ways helping to rebuild the destroyed infrastructure. We need to realize that there are enormous effects of the attacks. The Ukrainians are able to shoot down many of the incoming missiles and drones, but not all of them, and therefore these attacks has caused significant damage.
China will step up efforts to accelerate vaccination for elderly people, especially for those aged 60 and over, said an official with China's National Administration for Disease Prevention and Control on Tuesday in Beijing. Xia Zhang, head of Health and Immunization Department under the administration, briefed a press conference on the COVID-19 vaccination progress in China, noting that elderly people will benefit most from COVID-19 jabs.
Now the situation of epidemic prevention and control is severe and complicated. COVID-19 vaccines still have good effect in preventing severe cases and deaths. Vulnerable people, including the elderly, can easily develop into severe and critical cases if they are infected with COVID-19, so they will benefit the most from the vaccines.
The Russian Defense Ministry said that Russian troops are involved in military drills in neighboring Belarus. According to the ministry, the soldiers are undergoing intense training to counter a hypothetical enemy. Belarus's defense ministry announced on October 16 that just under 9,000 Russian troops would be stationed in the country as part of a regional grouping of forces to protect its borders.
To some football news now. We finally have the qualifiers from Groups A and B of the World Cup after the end of the third and last day of the phase. In Group A, the Netherlands took the lead of the group by winning 2-0 against the host country Qatar, and will be accompanied to the round of 16 in the same group by Senegal that beat Ecuador 2-1, and will thus be able to play for the second time in World Cup qualifiers phase after 2002 when it reached the quarterfinals. In Group B, England won against Wales 3-0 and therefore became the leader of Group B with 7 points. Another decisive match which opposed the USA to Iran, and in which the Americans snatched the victory thanks to Ivan Perisic's goal scored in the first half, confirming the qualification of the USA to the next round of the World Cup. Well, that's it for today. For more news, you can check our social media platforms as well as our website. From me and the rest of the team, thank you for tuning in. Till next time, take care.